of yesteryear. Now, today I wanted to concentrate on a really great Iraqi Rabbi, I believe 18th of Tevet. It's going to be just over in a week's time. He's going to mark his Hilula. His name is Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Very great rabbi, some of the great rabbis from Baghdad, from, let's just say, a great, grandiose, let's say, all-star selection of Rabbanim there was at that point in time. Some of the great rabbis that, let's just say, in himself. Now, I think he was born back in the Hebrew year, Taf Kuf Mem Chet, and his father's name was Rabbi Yehoshua ben Ovadya, if I'm not mistaken. And what's interesting, he would actually learn under the auspices of Rav Moshe Chaim of Baghdad, who was very much a great rabbi of that specific point in time. Rabbi, I believe we've mentioned about on various occasions before here inside this series, and how important it is that we speak about the great rabbis of yesteryear. So Rav Moshe Chaim of Baghdad, he actually lived between 1752 till 1836. He was a posek, he was a darshan, he was a rabbi of the Iraqi Kehila, let's just say in itself, and I think he was very big also in Basra, if I'm not mistaken, and Baghdad also. I think his grandson happens to be the famous Ben Ish Chai, respectively. Let's explore a bit more within regards to Rabbi Moshe Chaim Baghdad, to just get a feel within regards to the caliber of Rabbi that Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya would actually learn under. He would learn, and really, I think he was actually close to Rav Tzadka Chutzin, if I'm not mistaken, at that point in time. Would learn actually Gemara and close to various other rabbis, and was, I think he would serve as head of Jewish court, and was rabbi of the city of Baghdad at one window of time. And I think also at that point there was other famous rabbanim. Over there, I think he'd give over grandiose sermons, especially on En Yaakov, the code of Jewish law. Also, he'd give, and Parshat Shavua. And inside the synagogues, he was famous for the various main Shabbatot of the year, also to give over grandiose sermons. I think Rabbi Eliyahu ben Moshe Chaim would be one of his descendants, famous Kabbalists, especially from the 19th century. Also, Rabbi David was another great rabbi that would descend him, if I'm not mistaken. Also, the famous Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad, also popularly known as Ben Ish Chai, and various other rabbis at that point in time. And so much you can say within regards to Rav Moshe Chaim. He was very well connected with other great rabbis all over the world, not just in Iraq, including the caliber of Rabbi Yehuda Borla, and that he happens to be another great rabbi we've spoken about on various occasions before. I think also he was close to rabbis in Aleppo, including Rabbi Eliyahu Shema Halevi. He was a famous rabbi, let's just say, of that window of time in his place, and Rabbi Abraham Entebbe, who was a rabbi and the judge and Kabbalist and the poet, who happened to have been actually from Syria also. So he was very, very well connected all over the different corners of the world, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll leave over a great family of many, many great rabbis, and I think it was close to Rav Sasson Jandach, if I'm not mistaken, and another rabbi, Rabbi Shlomo Yecheskel Yehuda, another great rabbi we've spoken about before on various occasions before, who actually had, I believe, had the famous Yeshiva Chesed Kel Yeshiva in, and he obviously himself was, I think somehow he was connected to Yehoshua Yelin, also, who I think happened to be a famous, let's say, Zionistic figure, businessman in the city of Jerusalem, and was one of the old Yeshuv, and also obviously would be somehow maybe distantly connected, somehow connected to David Yelin, who was also a famous Zionistic activist also. So he was very, very well, actually Rav Moshe Chaim was rabbi of many, many great rabbis that actually happened to have come from Iraq, including Rabbi Eliyahu Chaim and Rabbi Shlomo Yecheskel Yehuda, who we mentioned about before, Rabbi Yosef ben, the famous physician, Rav Yosef, Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya. It was really who we happened to actually speak about today. So that was some of the Talmudim of his. But let's go back now to Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya here on this special edition where we are speaking about. So we said that he would learn under auspice of Rabbi Moshe Chaim of Baghdad. After, I think, he was also quite close, I think, to Rabbi Reuben David Navoy, if I'm not mistaken. Who was he? He was also a great rabbi, head of Jewish court. He happened to have been in Baghdad. I think he passed away. He was quite young. He was only about 51 years of age. And that specific family, I think itself, happened to have been in Syria, if I'm not mistaken. he was once again a Talmid of Rabbi Moshe Chaim at Baghdad, and obviously he was just a very famous rabbi at that point in time. I think that his Talmud was Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yosef HaRofeh, so that was his full name to give his full title, let's just say, itself. There was a famous Chevrat Abat Shalom, if I'm not mistaken, over there. Let's speak about that just for a minute. I think we actually recorded a video. I think it's proper Mostot it happens to be, and it's actually currently was founded, I think, also by Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Hillel, a fantastic organization, if I'm not mistaken. But it was, let's just say, many, many different Torah books and collections, and it's a whole entire fantastic institution of Torah books, which is published nowadays within regards to that. That's something that we should point out within regards to this organization. Okay, so let's continue over here. So we're talking about here Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya, very great rabbi of his time. He would work, if I'm not mistaken, in the year Tavkuf Pei Aleph. He would start working as a dayan in the Bet Din of Rabbi Yaakov Fatahi, a Shrim, if I'm not mistaken. Remember, we were speaking about the Shrim, famous rabbinic family before. I think it was a kilula of a specific Rabbi Shrim quite recently, if I'm not mistaken. That's something that we have to point out. And come with the Tavkuf Tzadik Hey, he was appointed head of Jewish court. And Mebena Deyanim Beidino, Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yosef HaRofeh. So he was Rabbi Yosef HaRofeh, happened to have been part of this Bet Din structure, which he very much happened to have been in. Then come on, I think it was in Te'af Reish Bet. Hitpater Mishrato Ve'et Mokomo Mila Rab Ovadya Halevi. But Taf Reish Zayin Chaza Misra Lemesharet Dayan. He would go back to work as a Dayan. Ach Ha'abed Din Haya Kava Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yosef HaRofeh. That point in time, and in the year Taf Reish Tet, he was appointed, I think, through Rav Raphael Katzin, back to become the head of Jewish court. Rav Raphael Katzin, I think, was born in the year 1790, passed away in 1871. He was another great halachic arbitrator. He was a philosopher, let's just say. He was a thinker and was one of the great rabbis of Iraq in his point in time. I think he was the author of the famous book called the Derech HaChayim that we have to point out now. Among his Talmidim include Rabbi Abdallah Chanin, who happened to be one of the great rabbis and poets in Iraq in his time. Remember, we recorded a video about him before, I think, at the time period of his Hilula. He was a great rabbi in Iraq. I think he actually passed away in the year 1859, if I'm not mistaken. And remember, Iraq had a bastion of Torah learning and flourishing at that stage in time, and so much more can be said within regards to him that we have to point out. Okay, so that's very, very interesting. And I think he was quite close to the famous philanthropist, someone named Menachem Salah Daniel. Let's speak a bit about him. We did, I think, record a video about him, if I'm not mistaken. He lived between the years 1846 to 1940, if I'm not mistaken. He was a great rabbi in Iraq. He had lands. He was a donator in great respects. Let's explore just a little bit within regards to him. Menachem Daniel, he was Senator of Iraq. He was a deputy of the Ottoman Chamber of Deputies representing Baghdad, and he was actually born in Iraq from Iraqi parents also. I think he was appointed the first board of directors of the Baghdad Brigade, which was actually, I think, founded by the governor Mehmet Pasha, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously there was a formation of a monarchy in Iraq. He would become a Senate in Iraq in 1925. He represented the Mosaic Jewish community in Iraq. And very interesting. I think he would have a son, Ezra Salah Daniel, who would actually succeed him in the Senate. His father, I think, happened to be Salah Daniel, was famous for his charitable projects, and the place, let's say, had a palace located in Al Sinak area, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it was actually nicknamed the Man with the White Hand, as he founded and built the first orphanage for Muslim orphans and spent on it from his own money to help Muslim orphans and those from other sectors. And he was known for doing huge amounts of philanthropy for both Jewish and Muslim charities, and built a Muslim orphanage in 1928. I think he actually built a Jewish primary school in 1910, if I'm not mistaken. It's interesting enough, he was the uncle of Sassoon Esquel, who happened to have been also a key Iraqi statesman, a politician, a financer, I think regarded in Iraq as a father of parliament, if I'm not mistaken, and was the first minister of finance in the kingdom and a permanent member of parliament until he passed away, if I'm not mistaken, which is very, very interesting. Friends, anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community as we explore a few of the highlights in regards to Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya, where actually happens to be his Hilula. It's coming up over here. Let's speak a bit more within regards to him. I think he would be in Amad Bekshir Yedidot Im Hanakiv Ish Adat Amuslami בגדאד, אגדה עמית גורסה שחל איסור כללי בימי הרמדאן בבגדאד עד שרבי אליהו יהושע עובדיה הסביר לנקיב שהדבר לא סבבה ואיסור בוטל. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community. We're just going to take a short 1-minute break and we're going to back, so please hold on a minute and we are going to continue this video. Hi, Shalom, everyone. Thanks for being patient and waiting as we're exploring the life of a really great rabbi. Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya happened to have been from Iraq over here. So, so I think he passed away on the 18th of Tevet in the year Tafresh Nun Hey. And various great rabbis would actually, I think, eulogize him at that point in time, including Rabbi Yosef Chaim Bagdad, also popularly known as Ben Ish Chai. So he would be one of the great people. Yosef Chaim Baghdad lived between the years 1835 to 1909. He was a famous Kabbalist. He was a Darshan. He was a head, let's say, of the Kehillah over there. He was an author of great books. He was one of the most outstanding poskim in the world at that point in time, especially inside the entire Sephardic world. And was very, very close to other great rabbis, I think, especially Rav Abdallah ben Moshe Chaim, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he actually learned in the famous rabbinic yeshiva of the Beit Zilka under auspices of the famous Rabbi Abdallah Somech. And I think various shilot correspondence there was with Rav Chaim Pelagi, if I'm not mistaken. Remember, that was famous rabbinic family over there. I think when he was 17, he got married to Rabbi Rachel, I think the daughter of Rabbi Yehuda Somech, if I'm not mistaken, which was a relative of Rabbi Abdallah Somech, so he would become related through marriage, if I'm not mistaken. And he would be one of the, let's just say, very much a part within regards to the foundation of Yeshivat Porat Yosef, and was very much, I think, in touch with various other yeshivot, including the famous Yeshivat Bet El in Israel, and many other different yeshivot, and with rabbis from all across the world, we have to point out. He was close and was the author of many great books, Rav Yosef Chaim Baghdad. He had outstanding, let's say, drashot, various different sermons, which are so many of them, halacha books, including the Ben Ish Chai. I think it was actually authored in the year 1899. There was a Yad Chaim, there was Od Yosef Chai, another great halacha book. Palim, one of the famous question and answers books that happened to be, and the Torah Lishma, for example. There was various books he would actually author within regards to Mishnah and the Talmud. Ben Yehoyada, for example, Ben Yahu, Birkat Avot, and books on the Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Once again on Tanakh, there was many grandiose works on Kabbalah. There was also work on Kabbalah. There were kuntruses, and so on and so forth. He was one of the great rabbis, let's just say, of his day, we have to point out, and many commemorations were put in memory of the Ben Ish Chai. But anyway, we happen to be speaking about the famous Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya. The Ben Ish Chai would actually eulogize him. I think also Rabbi Sasson Yisrael and Rav Shlomo Tavina, who I think I actually mentioned him earlier on today. I've met a relative of his, if I'm not mistaken. He was a great Talmid Chacham. He was a sofer. He was a translator. He was a journalist. He was a printer, and was a famous rabbis in his generation of Baghdad. And famously had the Magid Mesharim, if I'm not mistaken. He was a Dayan, and wrote various different translations, just to say, especially from Arabic to Hebrew, if I'm not mistaken, in various different books. Also, another Rabbi Yitzchak Mijaled, I think, would eulogize him. Remember this famous picture featuring Rabbi Yitzchak Mijaled. He was one of the great rabbis of the time. He passed away in the year 1920. He was a Dayan. He was also a kosher slaughterer, a shochet, and the chief rabbi of Baghdad, which was a very prominent position of Rav Majaled, if I'm not mistaken, over there. He also learned in the famous Midrash Bet Zilka Talmudic Academy over there under auspices of Rav Abdallah Somech, and had various different, let's say, accolades. He was a shochet, he was a bodek in Baghdad. He was, I think, appointed, he was started learning in 1855. He was part of a grand jury Bet Din in Baghdad, also among great other rabbis, including Rabbi Nisim Chai Halevi, Rabbi Ezra Yehezkel HaKohen, Rabbi Yehoshua, Avram Yehoshua Choresh, and I think it was Rosh of Bet Din at the time period of Rabbi Elisha Nisim Dango, who was a great rabbi and had signature, let's just say, in himself, and he would take on the head position. And I think among his time with him, most notably was Rabbi Yehezkel Ezra Halevi, another great rabbi over there, who was a famous Kabbalist and a posek, and so on and so forth. What's interesting, Rav Majaled, he would have, he got married, I think, to Rabbanit Farcha, who was a cousin of Rav Moshe Hillel, if I'm not mistaken, and would be connected to him. And if I'm not mistaken, some relative somehow, he would have famous Paitan Moshe Chavusha was connected to him, and be related also to famous Rabbi Avram Hillel, and I think it actually happens to be Rav Avram Hillel's Hilula in the week coming, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something that we can point out. Actually, it's interesting, just that one topic, Rav Majaled would actually write various different great Torah books, including the laws within regards to shechita and investigating, I think, which was printed actually by Rabbi Shlomo Bechor Chotzin, if I'm not mistaken, in the year 1898. The Akim et Yitzchak, which was question and answers book. The Tzelach Rechev, which is Perushim on the Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. The Tehilot Yisrael, which is a Perush, an expoundation on Tehillim. I think some of his works was actually printed in connection with the famous Abat Shalom. That's something that we have to point out. But let's go back now to the famous, we're speaking about Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya, another great, who happens to be a great rabbi. I think also Avram Pelagi would actually give him a hesped also. Now it says up here, within regards to his writings, and it psakim, hesped shelo ala gvi Elia Yosef David Ezra, hitparsem be'iton perach, if I'm not mistaken, shuvot al chiyotot mimenu, nidfasu b'sifrei Rabbi Chaim Pelagi would actually bring him down, Rabbi Avram Pelagi, Rabbi Samach Gagin, or Shem Tov Gagin, I have to double check on that. Rabbi Shalom Moshe Chai Gagin, who lived between 1838 to 1883, who was a famous Shlochei D'Rabbanan, and was also a Rosh Yeshiva of the famous Yeshivat Bet El. I think he was close to him. Was another rabbi he was close to, Rabbi Rachmim Franco, if I'm not mistaken, who was a rabbi of Hebron, which is a very prominent position, and a Sephardi rabbi, and a foundation, one of the founders of the famous hospital called Chesed Abraham, if I'm not mistaken. Was another one, was Rabbi Menashe Saton, or Rabbi Menashe Matlub Saton, who was also a rabbi of the city of Aleppo and the chief rabbi of Tzfat being one of the 4 holy cities of Israel. Friends, we're just going to take another short 1-minute break over here, so just be patient, and we're going to keep speaking about the great Chacham who we're concentrating on today, friends. Hi, Shalom, everyone. Thanks for being patient. So we're learning about great Iraqi rabbis here today, as it marks the Hilul of the famous Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya. So everyone, if you're new onto the channel, welcome to our community here as we're exploring great rabbis. And please, if you didn't join yet, please join our channel over here, as happens to be the Hilul this week of the great Chacham that we have to point out over here. Okay, let's explore a bit more within regards to various different paskinims. Let's just say that he had, I think, לאחר פטירתו נתפס ספר מכתב ידו תחת השם שיחת דקלים חברת Abat Shalom in תשמ"ד. So I think the organization Abat Shalom would actually publish it, בספר חידושי משניות ורשות. It was a book, let's say, that expounded on various teachings within regards to the Mishnah and question and answers. Reshut means sheelot, shuvot, respectively over there. So a very, very grandiose, let's just say, importances in of itself. So let's continue over here. Smachto nidfasu al asfarim kol sason livona, I think tafresh yutet midrash Eliyahu, and the choter yeshai, which was in tafresh memtet, and maaset nisim, which was, I think, maybe in Bombay, if I'm not mistaken, tafresh memtet, and various others. Now I think he was mentioned on various occasions before. Paskin sotatab al yedei So many rabbis would actually quote him on various occasions with regards to various teachings. Rabbi Abdallah Somech mevi psak menu umechane oto harav amuvak. Rabbi Abdallah Somech would actually speak about him in very much glowing terms, calling him a harav hamuvhak, which is a huge, let's just say, compliment in of itself. Kakam Rabbi Sefer Chaim Bagdad would actually quote him. I think Hadayan Hazaken, if I'm not mistaken, very big lavish compliment. Be'achad ma ha-spedim odotav ne'ema shrov hadinim v'manhagim Baghdad al piv yechano v'al piv yis'o Yaakov. Now, yeah, very interesting. So other people will bring him down, if I'm not mistaken, on various occasions, if I'm not mistaken. Another man, I think. Sorry about this. We'll just find the place here. Yeah, I think other rabbis would also quote him, if I'm not mistaken, on various occasions of time. Include Rabbi Yehoshua Moshe, if I'm not mistaken, Katab al Paskov, Shiyad Tot Notet La Hakel al Tzibur. Rabbi Yehoshua Baruch Moshe Yecheskel, I think, was a head of Jewish court. The last ones, I think, Baghdad, and first chief rabbi of the city of Givatayim, also a very prominent position. Givatayim is a city very near Tel Aviv and Ramat Gan in Israel. It's a place that we visited, I believe, on various occasions before. Is something that we definitely have to point out over here also. So we can see also Benjamin Hasheni should be kept Baghdad, but if I'm not mistaken. So Rav Yisrael ben Yosef Benjamin, he happens to have been. So there was a connection there. He actually lived between the years 1818 to 1864. I don't know if we actually recorded a video within regards to him. He passed away, I think it was on 3rd of May in 1864, and was a famous rabbi of his time. Hopefully we're going to be able to speak about him at a later stage, but Ezrat Hashem. So, yeah, very interesting. And as we're on this special edition over here today, as we happen to be speaking about a great Iraqi rabbi. Remember, Iraq had many great rabbis of yesteryear, and many rabbis that I believe we've spoken about on various occasions before over here inside this series. So we happen to be speaking about the famous Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya. So he passed away in the year 1894. Was one of the great rabbis of Baghdad. There's a famous picture of him also. And he was close to Rabbi Abdallah Somech, as we said about before on various occasions. For I think someone named Moshe Shabbat in his book, The Yeshivot Baghdad, would actually bring him down in the 4th parak, I think, in the pages 63 and 64 over there. That's something that I very much have to point out. We can see other places he's brought down. The Aaron Sasson in Zichron L'chaim, which was a Toldot with Rabbi Baghdad, Min Hagnazim, I think in the 9th volume, if I'm not mistaken, he's very much featured and spoken about also, which is something that we have to definitely point out. And various other places. I think Avram ben Yaakov was Yehudi Bovel Masuf Tukfata Gonim Ad Yamino, I think, which came out through the Ben Tzvi institutions. Avram Yaakov, I think, was a famous historian, a sofer, an educator, and he actually passed away more recently in the year 2005, so he would bring him down, I think, inside his book. He was actually the author of many famous books, you have to point out. So that's something else that we, very important, but really got some, let's say, huge backbone within regards to late 19th century Iraq, mid-19th century Iraq today, and very early 20th century Iraq, where we spoke about Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya. There's a famous picture of him, I believe, where he's actually standing next to other great rabbis, including the famous Rabbi Abdallah Somech, which is absolutely astounding over here to actually see, and very actually inspirational also, we have to point out. So over here, so there was a cluster of many great rabbis of yesteryear, and he definitely happened to have been. That's something that we have to point out over here. Now, friends, everyone, we're a community here. Anyone that's tuned in live, please subscribe to the channel and join our community over here, as I believe we have lots of great content over here on this channel. We are trying to concentrate and educate and explore the life within regards to great rabbis of yesteryear. And thank God we've spoken about nearly 1,420 rabbis, I believe, approximately over here, which is a phenomenal achievement over here. And we couldn't have done it. Much of it is down to the great work over here that all of us are doing. And we really, really appreciate everyone listening and all the fantastic feedback everyone is giving us. Friends, what we're doing on this channel, we are doing huge amounts on this channel. We don't just record biography videos about great rabbis of yesteryear. We've actually taken on a recent project where we are recording the history of various countries across the world within regards to rabbinic structure and so on and so forth. We're trying to really get the science behind what was going on in each specific area. We're mostly concentrating on Ottoman countries, on Oriental countries and North African countries. We are really trying to get a nice backbone and let's just say in of itself, and really trying to do huge amounts over here. So thank God it's a phenomenal achievement, and we hope we can go from strength to strength. I think it's very important to actually do that. So yeah, we happen to have spoken about a famous rabbi today from Iraq. Remember, Iraq at that stage in time was a place where there was brilliant Torah study. It was world-class rabbis at that stage in time and great Talmudic academies. That's something that we have to point out over there. And yeah, it's a place that we've spoken about on various occasions before here inside this series. So we speak about the Migdoli, Baghdad, is always a huge, huge privilege. Friends, anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community over here. We also do tours all over Israel. We like to explore various different archaeological parts and significant parts. And the most exciting part, I believe, for me on this channel is the series we've got where we've got a different Jewish personality every single day will give us a burst of inspiration to really inspire Am Yisrael. And let's just say the 21st century listener to get really inspired and educated and imbued into how important actually that happens to be over here. So I'm recording this here on a Sunday night. It happens to be, I believe, we happen to be coming into Parshat Vayechi, the Shabbat. This is a Parsha that is talking all about Bereshit and end of the story of Bereshit as we come into Shemot next week, which will see us being in slave labor in Egypt for 210 or 400 years, or however one is going to calculate it over there. So we spoke about a great rabbi today, Rabbi Eliyahu Yehoshua Ovadya, famous rabbi from Iraq. Any of you happen to descend from any of the great rabbis that we're speaking about, friends, please send me an email. I would love to hear more information about the Chacham. I would really, really appreciate it. And as we're growing as a community, and the importance, let's just say, it is to re-educate and educate ourselves within regards to what happened in previous years over here. Especially one liking I have is exploring the Oriental countries, as I happen to be an Orientalist. I will have to point that out straight away. So that's very, very interesting. And I think on that note, we are going to call it a night. And welcome anyone. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We are nearing a staggering 8,000 subscribers, which is a phenomenal achievement over here. I don't think we would have expected to reach that feat at any stage in time. So a huge shout out to everyone. So I think on that note, we're going to call it a night. Take care and appreciate all the great feedback. Thanks so much. All right, so no, I see we're still on over there. Okay, just one more note, just to everybody, if you don't know, please, if you want to watch over the previous videos over here on this channel, please go on to the Stories of Tzaddikim section, and that's where you will see the previous 1,400 presentations, or plus, you could say, of great rabbis that happen to have been of yesteryear, as we're really going from strength to strength. So I really appreciate all the fantastic feedback. Take care and watch the space tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of great video content over here, And I also did put a lot of great content on today. Also, that's something that we have to point out over here, friends. So wishing you well, take care, and have a good night. Thanks.